Hi, you're watching Word Wise Living. In this episode, we're asking the question, how do I say I'm sorry? I'm sorry are some of the easiest and hardest words to say. You bump into someone at the grocery store aisle and you immediately say, "Oh, I'm sorry." But then someone confronts you about your actions or words or responses, and you're hesitant and even resistant to say, "I'm sorry." Why is that? Well, is there a right way of saying I'm sorry? Is there a right way of addressing the sin, offenses, conflicts, and disappointments that are so prevalent in relationships? Well, before we get there, let me first explain some differences in language that I've found to be helpful when attempting to repair a relationship, rectify a situation, and restore peace. The first word is sorry. It actually comes from the same word that we get sorrow from, and it's intended to communicate sadness and sorrow. There are certainly times when we've done something wrong or sinful that we should be sorrowful and communicate that sorrow over, but we'll get to that in a minute. There are also times when it's appropriate to communicate sorrow, saying that you're sorry, even when you've done nothing morally wrong. For example, perhaps you have been invited to some event and you are unable to attend, and it's clearly a disappointment to the one who invited you. Well, you can be sad that your friend is disappointed, and so you can rightly say, "I'm sorry. I have sadness and sorrow that I'm unable to attend the event that you invited me to." Or maybe you make some decision that you're well within your right to make. Perhaps you provide some consequence and discipline for your child, or perhaps as a family you decide with whom and how you're going to spend the holidays, or some decision that you made someone else disappointed. Well, you can honestly say, "It brings me sorrow to know that my actions have disappointed you." Or you can simply just say, "I'm sorry." Also, if you do something on accident, if you break something, or if you forget to do something, or like I mentioned earlier, you just bump into someone at the grocery store, you can and should feel sadness or sorrow about that, so it's appropriate to say, "I'm sorry." Now, the second word that we often use in such cases is apologize or apology. We often use it as a synonym for "I'm sorry." However, apologizing doesn't communicate sorrow at all. Instead, to offer an apology is to give a reason, a justification, or a defense. Similar to the term apologetics, which means to give a defense of the faith. To apologize is to explain. So, "Let me apologize. I was late because I got caught by a train. Let me apologize. I think I misunderstood what you were saying. Let me apologize. I don't think you understood what I was saying." Now, an apology can be coupled with an "I'm sorry" if in fact you are saddened and sorrowful that you were late or there was a misunderstanding or whatever the case may be. Now, an apology or explanation should not be used to justify or minimize wrongdoing or sin. That is reserved for our third word. Well, actually, phrase. "Will you forgive me?" Forgiveness is the only thing that can stop the death and ruin caused by sin. When we seek forgiveness and when it is granted, it breathes new life and hope into relationships. And when sin is left unaddressed, it is allowed to fester and spread like an infection. But there is a proper and effective way to get to asking that question, "Will you forgive me?" that will honor God and strive for the reconciliation that you seek. In his book, Peacemaker, Ken Sande provides the 7 A's of confession, and I have recommended them many, many times to facilitate restoring relationships. And we'll go through them quickly. Number 1, address everyone involved. Sins of action and speech affect others. and you should address everyone whom your sin has affected. Husbands, the way that you treated your wife has an effect on your children, and so you should address your children as well. If you spoke in a disrespectful or hurtful way to someone, you should address that individual and anyone who heard you say it. Ken says the confession should reach as far as the offense. Number 2, avoid if, but, might, or maybe. In fact, avoid any words that would minimize or excuse or seek to diminish what you have done. If I offended you, or, well, yes, I said that, but I was only responding to, no, avoid all those words that would seek to diminish or downplay what you have done. In fact, we should simply, and here's the third one, admit specifically. Confession means to call it what it is. So don't be vague. Don't use general terms. Say what you did specifically. Mention attitudes and actions. Mention both action and inaction. And using biblical terms is always best. So use gossip instead of I talked bad about you. Use bitterness instead of I held a grudge. You could say, I failed to love you as Christ commands me to, instead of simply saying, I haven't been a good husband. All right, number 4 is acknowledge the hurt. Now, the reality is, you will likely never truly know how your sin has hurt another person, but you should attempt to see it from their perspective. You should acknowledge the presence of broken trust and hurt, embarrassment, betrayal, or any other feelings that your actions may have caused. Number 5, accept the consequences. Just like in Luke 5:19, when the son that wasted all the father's money on wild living came back and said to his father, I don't deserve to be called your son, you should accept the consequences. It doesn't always mean that those consequences will come to pass, but you should be prepared to accept them. Another way of accepting consequences is also to make restitution. If you broke it, repair it. If you ruined it, replace it. And you can do that by communicating your plan to, number 6, alter your behavior. Your asking for forgiveness will certainly be better received if you can articulate that and how you intend to behave differently in the future, not only in this immediate action, but also in preventative measures, by cultivating your relationship with God, by growing spiritually and maintaining accountability. And then, number 7, ask for forgiveness. Say the words, will you forgive me? It should end with a question mark. I've assigned this to many, many people. If we're addressing some major issue or if we're trying to have a clean slate and we're covering several smaller issues, I typically assign them to write a letter to each other using these 7 steps as a guide. And well over 50% of the time, they don't ask for forgiveness. They say things like, I hope you can forgive me, or I desire your forgiveness. But asking the question, end it with a question mark. It puts you in a vulnerable place. It places you in a humble situation, depending on their response. Now, they don't have to forgive you. They should, but they don't have to. Perhaps they aren't ready yet. Perhaps they need time. You should allow them time. There's a bonus A. Allow them time to respond. Perhaps they want to see some fruits of repentance. They want to give some time to see if you have truly repented. Well, we'll cover that next time on Word Wise Living. If you've appreciated this content, then give it a like and a share and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.